The email arrived at 4:37 p.m. on a Thursday, nestled between a coupon for office supplies and a newsletter I'd never subscribed to. 13 words that ended 3 years of my life. Clara, your position has been eliminated. HR will process your exit package. I didn't immediately delete it. Instead, I printed it out on the fancy printer they'd installed last month, the one I wasn't supposed to use for non-essential documents. I folded the paper carefully, tucked it into my wallet behind a $1 bill I'd been saving, and walked to my lawyer's office without clearing my desk. They had no idea what they'd just done. My name is Clara Monroe. I'm 34, born to Polish immigrants who believed education was the only reliable path to the American dream. They were right, in a way. My PhD in computational linguistics had opened doors, but it was what I built in my kitchen at 2 a.m., while my microwave leaked radiation and my downstairs neighbor practiced saxophone. That truly changed everything. It started with frustration. I was working for a mid-sized tech firm in Milwaukee that specialized in customer service automation. Basic stuff. Chatbots that could tell you your account balance or help you reset a password. Nothing revolutionary. I kept telling my boss we could do more, that language processing had evolved beyond simple commands. He kept telling me to stay in my lane. So I created my own lane. The night my microwave shorted out, I was reheating leftover Thai food and wording what would become Empathic Core's foundation algorithm. The sparks from the ancient appliance made me jump, spilling green curry onto my keyboard. As I frantically wiped it clean, something clicked, not in the microwave, in my brain. What if an AI could read emotional context the way humans instinctively do? Not just keywords or patterns, but the undercurrents of frustration, joy, hesitation, or fear that color human communication. Sentiment analysis existed, sure, but it was crude. It could tell you if a review was positive or negative. I wanted something that could tell when a customer was about to cancel their subscription before they even mentioned cancellation. I worked through the night, forgetting about both sleep and the ruined microwave. By morning, I had a prototype. By the end of the week, I had a resignation letter drafted. By the end of the month, I had drained my savings and was coding in my living room full-time, surviving on ramen and determination. The breakthrough came 3 months later. Wingspan Airlines was facing a PR crisis after a video of a flight attendant being rude to an elderly passenger went viral. They had an automated response system, but it was only making things worse, sending tone-deaf apologies that further enraged customers. A former colleague who now worked there remembered my emotional AI idea and connected us in desperation. I deployed my prototype across their social channels within hours. It worked better than even I had anticipated. The system identified genuine distress versus performative outrage, tailored responses that de-escalated rather than inflamed, and flagged the most volatile situations for human intervention. Within 48 hours, the crisis was contained. Within a week, Wingspan's stock had recovered. Within a month, their CEO was calling me personally. That's when Empathic Core was truly born. I assembled a small team. Raj, a brilliant back-end engineer who'd been passed over for promotion too many times at Google. May, a UX designer who understood that emotion needs visual language. And Thomas, a data scientist with an unusual background in literary theory. We worked out of my apartment until the noise complaints forced us to rent a dismal office space above a vape shop. The landlord gave us a discount because we fixed his ancient server setup for free. Success came in waves. First Wingspan, then 3 more airlines, then a healthcare provider, then a financial services firm. Our system wasn't just preventing PR disasters, it was transforming customer retention, identifying at-risk accounts before traditional metrics could spot them. We were small but mighty, profitable within our first year. Then VeritySpan came calling. They were massive, a tech conglomerate with fingers in everything from social media to smart home technology. Their CEO at the time, Richard Harlow, took me to dinner at a restaurant where the menu had no prices. He told me Empathic Core was the missing piece in their customer experience ecosystem. He used words like synergy and vertical integration while I calculated how many months of payroll I could cover with what he'd spent on wine. "We want to acquire you," he said finally. "We want you to scale this technology across our entire portfolio." The offer was tempting, but not what I'd expected. $1 million for the company, plus executive positions for all four of us. It seemed low given our profitability, but Richard countered with what sounded like the perfect compromise. "The money is just a formality. Clara, we're bringing you in as partners, not assets. You'll have autonomy, resources, and a much bigger playground. We'll structure it as a nominal acquisition, just $1 plus equity packages. But you'll retain certain rights to your intellectual property under specific conditions." It sounded reasonable. It sounded exciting. It sounded like everything we'd worked for. My lawyer, Lucas Grant, wasn't convinced. Lucas was an old family friend who'd helped my parents navigate immigration paperwork decades ago. He'd given me a discounted rate when I started EmpathyCore, taking his payment partly in home-cooked pierogi. "This contract is problematic," he said, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "They're offering you safeguards with one hand and taking them away with the other." We spent 3 weeks negotiating. Lucas insisted on one critical addition, Clause 9D, the reclamation right. In the event any founding member was terminated without documented cause, all intellectual property rights would revert to the original entity, EmpathyCore, which would be re-established with its original ownership structure. "They'll never agree to this," I told him. But they did. Richard dismissed it as a psychological security blanket that would never come into play. The contract was signed. The symbolic $1 exchanged hands. We celebrated with champagne in plastic cups. For 6 months, it was everything Richard had promised. We moved into sleek offices in the VeritySpan Tower. Our team expanded from 4 to 15. Our technology was integrated into 7 of VeritySpan's major product lines. I had a new title, Chief Innovation Officer, and a salary that finally let me replace my microwave. The first sign of trouble came when Richard Harlow announced his retirement. The new CEO, Marcus Drell, came from a management consulting background. He brought with him a team of strategic visionaries, including Delaney Shore, the new VP of Marketing. I first met Delaney in what was supposed to be a casual meet and greet. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my car and asked questions that seemed innocent but left me uneasy. "So this emotional AI, it's like giving a chatbot feelings, right? So adorable," she said, tapping manicured nails against her tablet. "Not exactly," I replied. "It's a sophisticated pattern recognition system that identifies emotional states through linguistic and contextual markers." Yes," she nodded, clearly not listening. "But for marketing, we need something more accessible. Have you considered giving it a cute avatar? Maybe a little robot with a heart?" That conversation was the canary in the coal mine. Within weeks, our marketing materials featured a pastel-colored cartoon robot named Pixley that bore no resemblance to our actual technology. Our case studies highlighting real business impact were replaced with vague testimonials about emotion-forward engagement. Worst of all, our core algorithm, the one I'd developed over that plate of curry-stained code, was being referred to as the Pixley protocol. I tried to push back, scheduling meetings with Marcus that were consistently rescheduled, then canceled. When I finally cornered him in the elevator, his response chilled me. "Clara, you need to understand something. EmpathyCore is VeritySpan now. Your technology is our technology. Your vision is subject to our strategic direction. If that's a problem, perhaps you should reconsider your position here." The systematic erasure continued. My team was gradually reassigned to different projects. Raj was moved to back-end infrastructure. May was transferred to the consumer products division. Tomas was relegated to generating reports that no one read. Client meetings that I'd once led were now conducted without my knowledge. I was being boxed out of my own creation. At company presentations, Delaney would introduce me as one of our innovative team members rather than the founder. In press releases, EmpathyCore was described as developed by VeritySpan engineers. My name appeared less and less in internal documentation. Then came the patents. 3 new applications covering core aspects of my original algorithm, listed Marcus and Delaney as co-inventors. My name appeared fourth after someone who'd joined the company 2 months earlier. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Lucas. "They're trying to push me out," I said, spreading printouts across his desk. "They're taking credit for my work, sidelining my team, and now they're manipulating the patents." Lucas adjusted his glasses and examined the documents. "Have they formally changed your role or responsibilities?" "Not in writing. It's all subtle. Meetings I'm not invited to. Decisions made without my input. Being introduced as a team member instead of founder." "What about the contractual commitments? The autonomy you were promised?" "Nothing I could prove in court. It's all been verbal backtracking. Market conditions have changed. We need to pivot the strategy. Corporate doublespeak." Lucas tapped his pen against the patent applications. "These are concerning, but not unexpected. Large companies often reassign patent ownership. What's more important is whether they're preparing to trigger Clause 9D. You think they're going to fire me?" "I think they're laying the groundwork to remove you while keeping your technology. The question is whether they remember that termination clause." I left with a plan. Document everything. Back up personal files and keep a copy of the original contract close at hand. I also withdrew $1 from an ATM and tucked it into my wallet, just in case. The next 3 months were corporate psychological warfare. My budget was cut. My remaining team members were relocated to a different floor. My office was needed for visiting executives so frequently that I worked from the company cafe more often than not. Delaney's pastel robot began appearing on merchandise, stress balls, coffee mugs, even socks handed out at conferences. Most painful was watching what they did to my technology. The sophisticated emotional recognition system that could detect subtle patterns of customer distress was simplified into a crude mood meter with emoji-like indicators. Clients began reporting decreased effectiveness, but these complaints never made it past the new customer success team. The final blow came during a company-wide reorganization. My division, what remained of it, was integrated into the larger product team. My role as Chief Innovation Officer was eliminated. Instead, I was offered a position as Technical Advisor with a 40% pay cut and no direct reports. It was, effectively, a demotion designed to make me quit. I accepted it with a smile that confused Marcus so visibly that he asked me to repeat my answer. I said I accept the new position. I told him, "I'm committed to VeritySpan's vision, whatever form that takes." For 6 more weeks, I came to work early, left late, and documented everything. I watched as they gradually dismantled everything we'd built, replacing substance with style, effectiveness with marketability. I said nothing when Delaney presented The Future of Pixely at the quarterly All Hands, a roadmap that abandoned the core innovation in favor of superficial features. Then came the Thursday afternoon email. 13 words that changed everything. Lucas was waiting for me when I arrived at his office, as if he'd been expecting the news. I handed him the printed email and the dollar bill I'd been saving. "They did it," I said simply. "They activated Clause 9D. Lucas read the email twice, then placed it in a folder he'd apparently prepared for this moment. No documented cause, no performance improvement plan, no severance details, just elimination of position. He looked up at me over his glasses. This is exactly what we needed. Within 24 hours, we filed the paperwork to reactivate EmpathiCore as an independent entity. We submitted formal notice to VeritySpan's legal department invoking Clause 9D and the return of all intellectual property rights. We included a cashier's check for $1 to repurchase the company as stipulated in the original contract. The response was immediate and panicked. First came a call from HR claiming the email had been sent in error, then a voicemail from Marcus claiming a miscommunication. Finally, a formal letter from their legal department claiming the clause was unenforceable. But Lucas had done his work well. The contract was airtight, the clause was valid, and most importantly, in their haste to eliminate me, they'd created a perfect paper trail proving termination without cause. What they hadn't realized, what Marcus and Delaney couldn't have known, was that Richard Harlow had never actually completed the acquisition paperwork correctly. In the handover after his retirement, several critical regulatory filings had been overlooked. Technically, legally. Empathicor had never been fully absorbed into VeritySpan. It had existed in a state of suspended animation, ready to be revived. 3 days after receiving my termination email, I received a much longer email from VeritySpan's chief legal officer. The language was dense with legalese, but the message was clear. They were acknowledging the validity of Clause 9D, all patents, trademarks, and intellectual property related to the original Empathicor technology were being transferred back to me. They requested a reasonable transition period and favorable licensing terms. I forwarded the email to Lucas with one question. Did we just win? His response came minutes later. They surrendered, unconditionally. That night, I called Raj, May, and Tomas. We met at my apartment, the new one, not the kitchen where it all began, and opened the bottle of champagne I'd been saving for a special occasion. So what now? May asked, her glass raised. We start over. We start better, I corrected. We already have the technology. We already have the clients, most of whom have been unhappy with the changes VeritySpan made. And now we have something else, a story. That story spread faster than we could have imagined. A tech journalist who'd covered our original founding caught wind of the situation and published an article titled The $1 Patent Queen: How Clara Monroe Reclaimed Her AI Empire. It went viral within hours. Suddenly, my inbox was flooded with interview requests, investment offers, and, most valuably, messages from former clients eager to return to the original Empathicor technology. 3 venture capital firms reached out with funding offers that dwarfed what VeritySpan had paid us. Meanwhile, VeritySpan was in damage control mode. They issued a press release describing an amicable separation and strategic realignment. Delaney posted a self-aggrandizing LinkedIn article about authentic leadership through transition, with the hashtag #ElevateAuthenticity. She turned off comments after less than an hour, but not before several former colleagues had publicly called out the hypocrisy. Within 2 weeks, we'd secured new office space, deliberately located just 3 blocks from VeritySpan's headquarters. Within a month, we'd rehired most of our original team, plus several VeritySpan employees who'd witnessed the debacle and decided to jump ship. Our first client meeting in the new space was with Wingspan Airlines, who'd suffered through VeritySpan's improved version of our technology and were eager to return to the original. The most satisfying moment came 6 weeks after my termination. I was invited to give a keynote at Northbridge Pulse, a prestigious tech conference where I'd originally been scheduled to participate in a panel discussion as a VeritySpan representative. Now I was speaking as the CEO of the reborn Empathicor. My speech wasn't about revenge, it was about innovation, integrity, and the importance of proper contracts. I told the story of the curry-stained keyboard, the microwave sparks, and the algorithm that changed how computers understand human emotion. I talked about building something meaningful and watching it be dismantled for the sake of marketability. And I talked about the importance of believing in your own creation enough to protect it, legally, technically, and emotionally. I ended by holding up a framed copy of the $1 check we'd sent to VeritySpan to reclaim our company. Sometimes, I told the audience, the most valuable things can be purchased for just $1. But the knowledge of what you've built and the determination to protect it, that's priceless. The applause was still echoing when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Marcus Drell had resigned as CEO of VeritySpan, effective immediately. I didn't smile at the news. I didn't need to. I was already back in my lane, driving faster and smarter than before, with the road ahead clearer than it had ever been. The following months were a whirlwind of rebuilding, innovation, and growth. We rehired our core team and added new talent drawn to our resurrection story. Our client base expanded beyond our previous reach, with companies specifically seeking us out because of our proven resilience. The technology evolved too, freed from VeritySpan's superficial marketing approach. We refocused on the sophisticated emotional intelligence that had been our foundation. 6 months after reclaiming our company, we closed a Series B funding round that valued Empathicore at $220 million, more than 200 times what VeritySpan had paid. The term sheet arrived on a Thursday afternoon, almost exactly at 4:37 p.m. I couldn't help but smile at the symmetry. We celebrated at the same vape shop that had once been below our first real office. The owner had expanded into the adjacent space, and we rented out the back room. It wasn't the fancy restaurant where Richard Harlow had first proposed the acquisition, but it felt right. Authentic in a way that Delaney's hashtags never could be. Raj brought the champagne this time, a significant upgrade from what we'd drunk from plastic cups years ago. May designed custom labels for the bottles featuring a small microwave with sparks coming out of it. Tomas prepared a data visualization showing our journey, the initial growth, the VeritySpan depression, and the dramatic resurrection spike. As we toasted our success, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I almost ignored it. This was a night for celebration, not business. But something made me check. It was from Richard Harlow, the former VeritySpan CEO whose retirement had set everything in motion. Clara, it read, I've been following your remarkable comeback with interest. While I cannot comment on my successor's decisions, I want you to know that I always believed in what you built. The reclamation clause was not just a psychological security blanket, as I so dismissively called it. It was insurance against exactly what happened. Some might call it foresight. I call it justice. Congratulations on reclaiming not just your patents, but your vision. The business world needs more creators who stand their ground. I read the email twice, unsure how to feel. Was Richard claiming he'd anticipated Marcus and Delaney's betrayal? Had the clause been his idea all along, or was this revisionist history? An attempt to align himself with the winner after the fact? I decided it didn't matter. Whatever his intentions had been, the outcome was the same. Empathicore was ours again, stronger than before, with a story that had become legend in the tech community. I put my phone away and rejoined the celebration, grateful for the twisted path that had led us here. The lesson wasn't just about legal protection or intellectual property. It was about believing in what you create enough to fight for it, even when the odds seem impossible. As midnight approached, I clinked my glass for attention. My team, my friends, turned to listen. To the kitchen where it all began, I said, raising my glass. To the microwave that sparked more than it heated, to the contracts that saved us, and to whatever we build next. Their glasses rose to meet mine, and in that moment, I knew we were just getting started. They had taken credit for my work, but I had taken back our future. And it was worth far more than a single dollar. The real work began the day after our celebration. While reclaiming our intellectual property was a crucial victory, rebuilding a company from the ground up presented enormous challenges. We had the core technology and the team, but we'd lost precious time while VeritySpan had diluted our vision. Our first priority was reaching out to former clients. Many had grown frustrated with the pixely version of our technology and were eager to return to the original Empathicore system. Others needed convincing that we were stable enough to trust again. A few had signed long-term contracts with VeritySpan that couldn't be easily broken. I spent weeks in back-to-back meetings, re-establishing relationships and rebuilding trust. Our story helped. People love an underdog comeback. But business decisions ultimately came down to value and reliability. We had to prove we were both. The technical challenges were equally daunting. While we'd reclaimed our patents and core algorithms, much of the infrastructure we'd built at VeritySpan remained their property. Raj and his engineering team worked around the clock to rebuild our systems from scratch, improving them in the process. It's actually a blessing in disguise, Raj told me one night as we reviewed architecture diagrams over takeout in our still sparse office. Their systems were becoming bloated with unnecessary features. We get to start clean, keep what worked, and discard what didn't. May approached our rebirth from a different angle. We need to reclaim our visual identity without looking bitter or reactive, she explained, presenting mood boards for our rebranding. No pastel robots, obviously, but also nothing that screams anti-VeritySpan. We need to look forward, not backward. She developed a new visual language for empathicore that emphasized human connection through abstract representations of emotional states, flowing lines in complementary colors that subtly shifted across interfaces as emotional tones changed. It was sophisticated, distinct, and impossible to reduce to a cartoon mascot. Thomas had perhaps the most critical role in our resurrection. While VeritySpan had been parading Pixley around trade shows, they'd neglected the data science that made our emotional intelligence engine actually work. Under their management, the system had stagnated, using the same models and training sets we'd developed years earlier. They never understood what made it special. Thomas said, showing me comparison metrics between our original system and VeritySpan's version. They treated it like a finished product instead of a living system that needs to evolve. He proposed an ambitious overhaul of our core models, incorporating new research in linguistics and psychology that had emerged in the intervening years. It would require significant investment and months of development, but would leapfrog us ahead of not just VeritySpan, but all potential competitors. I approved the plan immediately. If we were going to come back, we weren't going to just reclaim our old position. We were going to advance it. Funding this resurrection required creative thinking. The publicity around our story had attracted interest from investors, but I was wary of rushing into new partnerships after our experience with VeritySpan. Lucas helped us structure a unique funding round that prioritized operational independence over valuation. You've already sold your company once and had to take it back, he reminded me. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. We created a dual-class share structure that kept voting control firmly with the founding team while offering attractive financial returns to investors. We also implemented what Lucas called anti-Marcus provisions, specific contractual terms that prevented the kind of gradual marginalization I'd experienced. 3 months into our rebuilding, we got an unexpected call from Wingspan Airlines CEO, Alexandra Reyes. She had been our first major client before the VeritySpan acquisition and had reluctantly stayed with them afterward. Clara, she said without preamble when I answered, I need the real empathy core back, and I need it yesterday. She explained that their customer satisfaction metrics had been steadily declining since VeritySpan's improvements to our system. What had once been a sophisticated tool for identifying and addressing customer concerns had been reduced to a superficial sentiment tracker that missed critical signals. We had an incident last week, she continued. A passenger posted about anxiety over flying after a recent surgery. The system categorized it as slightly negative and sent a generic response. The post went viral. And now we're dealing with another PR crisis, exactly what your original system would have prevented. I listened to her frustration, recognizing the familiar pattern. VeritySpan had sacrificed effectiveness for marketability, substance for style. It was the same thing they'd done to me. We can help, I told her, but we'll need to rebuild from the ground up. The integration points, the data structures, everything will need to be reconfigured. Whatever it takes, Alexandra replied. And Clara, I've already spoken with my counterparts at 3 other airlines. They're having the same issues. They're ready to come back too. That call changed everything. Within days, we had signed agreements with 4 major airlines to re-implement the original empathic core technology. The contracts included substantial upfront payments that solved our immediate cash flow concerns and gave us runway to complete Thomas's model upgrades. The industry took notice. Trade publications ran stories with headlines like, Airlines abandon VeritySpan's Pixley for original empathic core technology, and Emotional Intelligence Wars. Monroe's comeback threatens VeritySpan market share. Our phone started ringing with inquiries from companies in healthcare, financial services, and retail. All industries where genuine emotional intelligence in customer interactions created measurable value. As our client base expanded, so did our team. We hired selectively, prioritizing talent who understood our mission over those with impressive resumes. Several former VeritySpan employees reached out, including some who had been directly involved in sidelining me. One such request came from Jason Martinez, who had been appointed to lead Pixley product strategy after my demotion. His message was contrite. explaining that he'd been placed in an impossible position and had tried to preserve what made the technology special despite pressure from Marcus and Delaney. I was torn about how to respond. Part of me wanted nothing to do with anyone who had participated in dismantling my vision. Another part recognized that many employees had simply been doing their jobs in a toxic environment. I consulted with Raj, May, and Thomas before making any decisions. Their perspectives varied. Raj was skeptical of anyone from VeritySpan, while May believed in second chances. Thomas suggested a practical approach: judge each person on their technical merits and their understanding of what had gone wrong. In the end, we invited Jason for an interview, not as an executive, but as a potential team member. His technical knowledge was sound, but more impressive was his candid assessment of how VeritySpan had failed. They never understood that the emotional intelligence wasn't a feature to be packaged. It was the foundation everything else should have been built upon, he explained. Every time I tried to preserve the core functionality, Delaney would redirect to user-friendly visualizations or engagement metrics that missed the point entirely. We hired him as a product manager, reporting to May. It was a step down from his previous role, but he accepted without hesitation. Over the following months, he proved invaluable in helping us understand exactly how VeritySpan had dismantled our technology and what we needed to do differently this time. 8 months after reclaiming Empathicore, we launched our new platform. It maintained the sophisticated emotional intelligence of our original system, but incorporated Tomas's enhanced models, May's intuitive interface design, and Raj's scalable architecture. Early results from our airline partners showed a 42% improvement in accurately identifying and addressing customer concerns compared to VeritySpan's version. The launch coincided with a major industry conference where VeritySpan was also presenting. Their session, still featuring the pastel pixely mascot, was scheduled directly opposite ours. While we couldn't see their presentation, we later heard that attendance had been sparse. Our session, by contrast, was standing room only. Delaney Shore tried to save face by announcing a next-generation emotional intelligence system coming the following quarter. But industry analysts were skeptical. One wrote a particularly cutting assessment, having lost the original Empathicore technology and team. VeritySpan appears to be promising to reinvent what they already had and squandered. As satisfying as it was to see VeritySpan struggling, I made a conscious decision not to focus on them. We had our own path forward, and dwelling on the past, even in victory, would only distract us. That resolve was tested when Marcus Drell's replacement as CEO, a veteran tech executive named Diana Chen, requested a meeting. The irony wasn't lost on me. After months of being ignored when I requested meetings with Marcus, now his successor was asking for my time. Lucas advised caution. They may be looking for acquisition possibilities again, or trying to negotiate licensing terms more favorable than what they're currently stuck with. Despite his concerns, I agreed to the meeting, held at a neutral location, a conference room in my lawyer's building. Diana arrived alone, without the entourage of advisors Marcus had always surrounded himself with. "Thank you for meeting with me," she began. "I've spent my first month at VeritySpan assessing the damage from previous leadership decisions. The Empathicore situation is perhaps the most egregious example." She was direct and professional, acknowledging the mistreatment I'd experienced without making excuses. She explained that she was working to change VeritySpan's culture and approach to innovation, starting with how they treated the creators behind their technologies. "I'm not here to propose another acquisition," she clarified. "That bridge has been thoroughly burned. I'm here to discuss how we might resolve our overlapping business interests in a way that benefits both companies." The proposal she outlined was surprisingly reasonable. VeritySpan would formally acknowledge Empathicore as the original creator of the emotional intelligence technology. They would rebrand their derivative product to avoid confusion and pay a fair licensing fee for the patents they were still using. In exchange, we would drop several pending legal challenges and agree to certain non-competition provisions in specific markets. I listened carefully, asking clarifying questions but making no commitments. When she finished, I promised to discuss the proposal with my team and get back to her. "One more thing," Diana said as she gathered her papers. Off the record, what you've accomplished in rebuilding Empathicore is remarkable. VeritySpan could learn from your resilience. The meeting left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, Diana seemed genuinely interested in rectifying her predecessor's mistakes. On the other, VeritySpan remained a powerful competitor with resources we couldn't match. After thorough discussion with my team and extensive legal review, we accepted a modified version of Diana's proposal. The agreement gave us the freedom to pursue our core markets while providing a steady revenue stream from VeritySpan's licensing fees. Most importantly, it formally acknowledged my role as the original creator of the technology, a vindication that meant more to me than the financial terms. The deal marked the end of the conflict that had defined our rebirth. We were no longer the company fighting to reclaim what was stolen. We were simply Empathicore, pioneers in emotional intelligence technology, with a future limited only by our imagination. 1 year to the day after receiving that 13-word termination email, I stood in our new headquarters, a full floor in a downtown office building with views of the city where it had all begun. The space was filled with our now 60-person team, celebrating both the anniversary and the announcement of our latest innovation, a predictive emotional intelligence system that could anticipate customer needs based on subtle linguistic patterns. As I looked around at the faces, some who had been with me since the kitchen microwave days, others who had joined during our resurrection, all now united in a shared vision, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey, even its painful parts. I raised my glass for a toast. A year ago today, someone thought they were ending our story with 13 words in an email. They didn't realize they were actually starting a new chapter, one where we got to rewrite the rules. The room erupted in applause. As it quieted, I continued. The most valuable lesson I've learned isn't about patents or contracts, though those certainly helped. This drew knowing laughter. It's that innovation isn't just about technology. It's about the people who believe in it enough to fight for it. That's what they couldn't take from us, no matter how hard they tried. The celebration continued late into the evening. As the crowd thinned, I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. Raj joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one to me and raised his in a private toast. To the world's most expensive microwave, he said with a smile. May it keep shorting out at exactly the right moments. I laughed and clinked my glass against his. And to the world's most valuable dollar, I added. Sometimes I still think about that kitchen, the sparks from the microwave, and the curry-stained keyboard where it all began. I think about the moments when I almost gave up, when fighting VeritySpan seemed impossible. I think about the 13-word email that was meant to end my career but instead reignited it. Most of all, I think about the lesson at the heart of our story. What you create matters, but how fiercely you protect it matters more. They took credit for my work, every line of code, every innovative solution, every breakthrough. But in the end, I took back something far more valuable than patents. I took back my voice, my vision, and my future. And unlike Empathicore, those were things that had never truly been for sale. Not even for $1.